My name is Teitelbaum, and I've been a psychotherapist since 1985, so that's a long time. And the reason that I got involved with working with child abuse is during my studies, because we have to learn about child abuse. I actually did some studying with Alice Miller, who's one of the leading experts in child abuse in the world. She came from Germany. And during her workshop, she said, abuse people. And I just thought, how could that possibly be? Because if you've been abused yourself, why in the world would you want to abuse someone else? And so then she told this story because I just couldn't believe it. She said, okay, think about yourself driving down the freeway and a car cuts you off, and then you see it cutting off someone else, and then it cuts you off again, and it's speeding around, and then you get halfway down to your destination, you look over to the right, and that car is being stopped by the highway patrol. How do you feel? And I was like, oh. And she said, and that's just a little tiny bit of how an abuser feels when they abuse someone else, because now someone who's had a lot of pain in their life now has someone to share that pain with, and they know what the pain feels like. And it's still, even though I could get it, and I've probably done that myself, go, oh good, they got caught, it was still so hard to understand how someone who's gone through that pain could cause it to someone else. So on a personal level, I watched people in my own family suffer and have hard relationships and not be able to be intimate with people because of the abuse they suffered as a child. And that made me really passionate to help people who'd been abused, to help prevent abuse, to help parents recognize the signs, because so many parents have signals, but they don't see them, whether they were abused themselves or just because they don't understand it. And there are a lot of signs, and we just need to learn to look for them. So I have become really passionate about this. I was on the DA's Commission for Child Abuse, part of the Child Abuse Council, and one of the doctors in the group said that he knew there was an underreporting of boys in the desert that had been abused, and I agreed to bring that back to the Child Abuse Council and see if we could take that on as a project. And that was 6 years ago, and we've been working on it ever since. When I see somebody who's been abused as a child, what I see is that they can't look me in the eye because there's a shame involved in being abused, and it's really hard for somebody to see you and look into your eye, and you're afraid that they'll see your secret. So often they'll look down, they'll look sideways, but they really have trouble making eye contact. I see somebody who's looking down a lot when they walk, somebody with rounded shoulders, somebody who might cover up more with clothing than needs to be for the weather. So there's a lot of signs. Somebody who might be cutting themselves, might have some scars on their arms or on their legs. So there's a lot of signs if you look for it. Just need to pay attention to what's going on. How people should respond when they hear somebody's been a victim of abuse would be with compassion, but what usually happens is they don't want to talk about it. So they'll divert the conversation to something else. They'll go, really? Oh, sometimes they even say, well, you should get over it. And that is why we're out speaking to so many people with the group that we have. It happens to boys, because people need to be educated about how important this issue is. It affects every area of the person's life, not just their sexual life, but their emotional life, their spiritual life, their friendships. It affects everything. So when somebody, I've even heard professionals say, well, you're an adult now, that happened to you a long time ago, you just need to get over it. Well, how do you get over something that has hurt your soul? You just can't get over it. So we want people to know they need to have compassion, understanding, and it's not that we want anybody to stay a victim. That's the last thing that we want. We want people to be what we call them in our group, courageous healers, because they're facing their issues, they're dealing with them, they're talking about them, and they're healing. So it's not that they're whining and they're not crying about it. That's a misconception. People think, well, if you're going to start talking about it, you're going to whine and cry and be a victim all your life, and that's far from the truth. It takes so much courage to talk about this, especially for men. It takes so much courage because they don't want to appear weak, they don't want to appear vulnerable, and they don't want anybody to feel sorry for them. They want to feel strong and courageous, and that's what we're teaching people to do. The first step in coming forward to talk about your abuse is just to tell somebody. The truth is, we go out to the high schools and I tell people right away, the students, that if you tell me, I am a mandated reporter and I do have to report it. So they know that, and it's so scary to think that I'm going to be responsible for ruining my family. I'm going to be responsible for ending my parents' marriage. I'm going to be taken away from my family, or my father's going to be taken away from my family. And that's a very, very scary thing to think about, to be blamed for that. And so what we tell them is tell somebody, tell a friend, journal if you can't tell anybody yet. If you can talk to a counselor, talk to a counselor. Trust that even though the process is going to be really scary, your life's going to change for the better. And Dave Pelzer, who's one of the speakers at our conference, every year, he's so wonderful. He has been through the worst abuse you can ever imagine. He had the worst case of child abuse in its time in 1973 before he was rescued from his home. And look what he's done with his life. He's out speaking. He wrote 17 books. He's been in the Air Force. He's got a child of his own. He's married. He goes out and talks all over the community to try to help kids. So he's a great example of no matter how awful your childhood was, you can become a productive person. One of the leading causes of abuse is the parents doing drugs and alcohol themselves, because it puts them in a state where they're not really thinking very clearly. And the more drugs and alcohol you do, the less your prefrontal cortex works, and so you're not making very good judgments. And now that our economy is so bad and people have less money to spend, they're more stressed, and so we're seeing the evidence of child abuse increasing right now. And when we go out to the high schools to talk to high school students, we tell the teacher how many, what the numbers are, the 1 in 4 girls, the 1 in 6 boys. And he starts getting the calculator out going, well, that would mean this many and this many in my class and this many in our school, and that can't be possible. And then when we're done with our talk, we ask the kids to send up anonymous 3x5 cards about what's going on in their life. And the stack we got is like this big. And he was shocked, absolutely shocked at the number of kids who are being abused right now. And so with the economy being bad and the parents being so stressed, the level of physical abuse and neglect is really increasing. So I wish we could say that we could prevent all abuse from kids, but I don't know how we can do that other than educating parents, letting them know that if they need help or they're stressed out, to call a friend, call a neighbor, ask for help. You don't have to do it all by yourself. The men in our group really want to help save young people from going through what they had to go through, because most of them have turned to drugs and alcohol to help numb their pain, and there isn't enough drugs and there's not enough alcohol to numb that pain, so it's just a temporary fix. And they did really well in school, and then when the abuse happened, they stopped doing well in school. And so this is so important to them, to help young men not have to go through what they went through and have a better, more productive life. So if you are a person who's been abused, the first step is to speak out, to find a group that you can go to get involved in your community. If we all band together, we can make a difference. We're educating our community right now. There's a lot of organizations that are there to help you. Reach out, help each other. The men in our group have become like brothers to each other, and they support each other. They call each other when they're in trouble. They're there for each other, and they want to help. They really do want to help. And helping someone else really helps you. So this is the time for volunteerism. This is the time to reach out and become a healing community, not a suffering community. Our world needs healing. So this is our first step in making that happen.